reliable, super fast broadband and anytime calls, all for the super low price of just £25 a month. So everyone can stream shows, get together online and smash that high score. It's now just £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. For new and existing customers, hurry to sky.com. Offer ends January 27th. Prices may change during contract. Sky Fibre areas. Speed varies by location. Average download speed 59 megabytes. Speed to hub more at sky.com.
Deep mud, sticky mud, splashy mud, muddy mud. Is that mud? Construction site mud mixed with cement and sand mud. Mud, glorious mud. If your business can't escape it, you'd better embrace it. The new Ford Transit Trail, built for the rough of it. All-wheel drive to get you through the thick of it. A bold Ford grille covered in it. The new all-wheel drive Ford Transit Trail. Get muddy at ford.co.uk. We're with you on this journey. Ford Commercial Vehicles, backbone of Britain. Visit ford.co.uk.
New all-wheel drive Transit Trail, part of the Trail range, which includes the Transit Custom with mechanical limited slip differential technology.
This is the sound of business owners bossing their day with Sage.
Fish delivery, bossed. Invoices, sorted.
Clients work out, boss. Expenses smash.
Tax return, done.
Take control of business with new financial tools from Sage. Boss it. Try for free at sage.com. Terms and conditions apply.
Well Man and Well Woman multivitamin gummies are great tasting, vegan and packed with 22 nutrients too, including vitamin B12 to support normal energy release. Well Man and Well Woman, yummy gummies with serious science. From Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
Whether you're starting your business
Or starting to get noticed.
spotting typos,
Or spotting trends.
making a difference,
Or making a deadline.
moving on up,
Or moving online.
sealing a deal,
Or sealing a leak.
reading the room.
Or your first 5-star review.
At Superscript, we know that business never stops.
So go all in with Superscript and leave the details to us.
Monthly business insurance shaped around you.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060973.
11:49 is the time. I apologise in advance. I'll give you another little bit of farage because I think it's so important to remember. I can see it now. It's actually happening in real time in front of me on screen. People claiming that pointing out how warm huge swathes of the English media and the Conservative Party were to Donald Trump is it's simply not true. Didn't happen. Never happened. No, you must have imagined it. 2 weeks ago, people were calling for Nigel Farage to be put in the House of Lords. Yeah, this fella.
You're just trying to defend Donald Trump. You know, you're saying, oh, well, you know, these things aren't what he said. When we've all just seen the footage of him talking and boasting about sexually assaulting women.
I was talking about Obama and your so-called Muslim.
Trump. Have you seen the footage of him boasting about sexually assaulting women?
And it was crass and it was crude and it was wrong. And men say dreadful things sometimes. But the point here...
It's just all right then.
No, they do. But you
some
know
men in particular.
If all of us were caught out, what we tell them the night out after a drink...
I'm sorry, is that what you do on a night out after a drink? Is that what you do on a night out after a drink, Nigel?
That was, of course, Nigel Farage claiming that after a night out, after a drink, we all boast about sexually assaulting women. And quite incredible, really. But, you know, stick in the House of Lords, good old Nige. And no one ever cheerleaded for Donald Trump in this country. I should have worked out by now whether cheerleaded is actually a word, shouldn't I? Miles is in Leeds. Miles, sorry to keep you. What would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thank you for taking my call. I think for me it was your bit just after the news on the half hour, this idea of hoping that I'm wrong.
Yes.
Would probably summarise my position in 2016 best.
Yes.
I would put myself in category 1 in terms of calling Trump out at the start. But I had a deep sort of hope, you may call it naive almost, that the sort of checks and balances of the US system would cancel him out and sort of negate his actions and his attempts.
Yes.
But distinctly saying to a friend at the time that his would be a filibuster presidency and that nothing would really happen because surely that the good of the US system would prevail. And I think I completely ignored his use of executive orders or his ability to use them in the way that he did.
I think that, and I thought Steve was very honest earlier about worrying that he might have been a kind of successor of 1930s ambivalence in Britain. I think someone sent me a message saying that the ambassador in Berlin at the time said, "Oh, they do like marching, these Germans," because I think it's almost a survival mechanism to not want to believe in what Philip Larkin called man's inhumanity to man. It's why I always talk about the Holocaust feeling to me as a younger man that as if it was something done by a different species. It wasn't people like us that did things like that. And I guess you had a similar reaction to Trump. You saw it, you saw where it could lead, and you put effort, emotional and intellectual effort, into persuading yourself that it wouldn't.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Funny, I think I had this naivety. I thought I'm only 23 myself, so I kind of became politically aware in the Obama years, and especially in his second term where kind of a lot of his actions were repressed and sort of subdued. I kind of assumed that the same would happen again, and I think for the first 100 days of me of Trump's presidency squarely put any hope I had back into the box for the next few decades.
And that, of course, is not a happy contemplation, because he could very easily have won last year, and God only knows what 4 more years would have looked like, and all of the people washing their hands now and pretending they never supported him, or no, I never liked him at all. No. What would they be doing now? What would be happening in Britain? I'm Incorrigible's just reminded me of the Ken Darroch story. And Ken Darroch basically described in advance what has happened. He talked about how Trump was likely to crash and burn, and his presidency would end in disgrace. It got leaked again. Vote Leave fingerprints were on that process. And it was Ken Darroch that had to walk the plank at Boris Johnson's behest. So, that's you say, oh, we never really cheerled for him, we just humoured him, or we just wanted to keep him sweet. They threw the British ambassador to Washington under the Vote Leave bus to keep Donald Trump happy. It's incredible, right?
Yeah, I think I would personally argue that anyone who did not at some point in those, especially in those first 100 days, and I'll come back to that idea again. Yeah. Anyone who was in that position didn't realise just quite the potential that was there, even if they weren't accepting of what was actually happening, the potential of what was going to unfold.
Well, that's why the Gove comments are so disingenuous, aren't they, from earlier when he was sort of talking, did that in campaign.
I'm a teacher, so
well, you don't need any lessons from me.
Hearing Gove so much over the last couple of hours has just brought that terrible flashback to me. But I do think anyone who didn't openly sort of realise what was happening and condemn him, that kind of, going back to what one of the earlier callers said, that silence is, being implicit in what's going on. And I just look back at my younger self and think how naive I was to kind of put so much faith into.
But isn't it funny, like you describing yourself as naive, Steve describing himself as having a cognitive crisis, or all of the people who can see the light, albeit that in some cases it took a while, are embarking on these epic self-examinations, but self-flagellations, I think, in Steve's case. But all of the people that went along with it, all of the people that actually enabled it, all of the people that cheered it, they're all already lying.
Akin to what your caller from New York says, you kind of have to double down. I can't be conned, I can't have been wrong.
Yeah.
I must find the kernel of truth somewhere in here. I must be right. It's kind of the signs of desperation, really, in my opinion.
Yes, and of course, another reminder of Steve Bannon, talking about how close he was to Boris Johnson. He might have been lying, but if you were Boris Johnson, you should have been shouting from the rooftops that you don't want to go anywhere near the fella, instead of chucking your own ambassador under a bus after he upset the man-child in the White House. 11:55 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The plan was, a lot of you are complaining via text that you can't get through on the phones, which gives you an indication of how busy we are. The plan was to have a little look at the social media questions, because clearly this ability to disseminate and congregate around untruths is a huge part of what led those people to Washington on Wednesday. But regulation is very difficult to imagine. Do you know, one of the moments where I thought perhaps we might be able to do radio phone-ins in a slightly different way than was traditional at the time. In other words, we might be able to ask tracked questions.
Yeah. Leave it. Well, I went to the cash point to get some Reddies. rain, so I just left the cash point. Down to get to get. So I'm going to get the water now. Well, it's under, so we'll be outside, and I'll be in what's the coffee shop called? I can't remember, but just easy parking, mate. Just drive into the place and then around on the inside. Well, nah, you listen to it. That's your biggest problem. Papa Alpha, Mike Alpha. It's pronounced Karma.
Leave them so that I go on. I've had to leave a couple where just being blatantly.
This is what it was always about, wasn't it? Making it acceptable to be publicly racist again. That's largely what yesterday's show was about, trying to work out what Trump's appeal was. Of course it never went away, but what we still refer to as political correctness managed to get a lid onto it and begin the process of removing it from the public bloodstream. But of course some people, many of whom we've mentioned on the programme today, absolutely hated the idea that we were going to remove racism from the public place. And they've had a pretty good few years, haven't they? In fact, in many ways, the events of the American election were probably the first bad news they've had in half a decade.
Store winners, I call them.
Yes, store winners. Never seen anything like it. And then to bring it back to Brexit, because I always have to, it's the first time ever, now that we're all being told to move on, it's the first time ever that the losers have been told not to gloat, which is yet more evidence of just how upside down things are. It's just gone 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Obviously, the appetite to continue with this is considerable, but we should probably try to find new threads or strands as well. Those four to say that we're just going to all indulge in a little bit of collective amnesia now. I can't do this kind of show every day, can I? Until everybody who supported the fascism of Donald Trump has admitted it.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at midday. There is criticism of the new coronavirus rules requiring international travellers to produce a negative test on arrival in England and Scotland from next week. The aviation industry is concerned that no standardised testing system has been established by the government, but the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says the information is provided on where and how you can get a test.
You'll be able to have a look, and as if say you're in France or something, you'll be able to have a look at the gov.uk site and be clearly provided with a list of the different tests that would be applicable for somebody who's in that particular location.
More than half of all major hospital trusts in England currently have more COVID patients than at the peak of the first wave of the virus. Analysis of data from NHS England shows the East and the South East are the busiest. The total number currently stands at just over 28,000 patients, 10,000 more than back in April. The EU has doubled its supply of the BioNTech Pfizer vaccine with a total of 600 million doses. It's after the Commission has been hit with criticism by member countries for the slow rollout of vaccinations across Europe. The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the process can now start to accelerate.
It is a proven vaccine, so the whole procedure of authorization is done. The member states know it, so they know how to handle it, they know the logistics behind it, and therefore this brings certainty for the planning, and it creates an additional momentum for vaccination throughout Europe.
The FBI is offering a £40,000 reward for information about pipe bombs that were left in Washington, D.C. They were found while Donald Trump supporters were rioting on Wednesday at the Capitol building. The president has now condemned what happened. Aston Villa's FA Cup's third-round tie with Liverpool has been given the go-ahead, despite a coronavirus outbreak at Villa. It's expected the hosts will field their youth team players. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading at 68.67. That's up 10 points. The pound buys €1.10 and $1.35. And the weather, a band of rain, sleet and snow will move southwards across England and Wales through the afternoon. Brighter skies in Scotland and Northern Ireland and feeling cold, a high of 5 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Holly Harris.
I don't mind how big it is.
It's got to be big.
Just need a regular smartphone, not the latest.
I've got to have the latest.
I mean, I'll pay a bit for it.
I wonder what mine's worth on eBay.
Only £230. Now we're talking.
Sold at £230. Blimey.
Time for a celebratory selfie.
Now, what could I buy?
Sell on eBay to make extra money. Buy, sell, eBay.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 4 minutes after 12 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Nigel Evans, of course, was the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. We heard from John Bercow earlier, who was Speaker of the House of Commons. It's only fair that we should get Nigel Evans involved as well.
It is that there were 61 million people who voted for Donald Trump. And when we stand up in this country and then condemn him for being racist, and I've seen no evidence of that, I have seen no evidence of him being racist or that they attack him in an unseemly way. We're actually attacking the American...
Yeah, okay, no evidence of him being racist, Nigel. That's interesting. Oh, what's in a name? I continue with this collection of evidence of the support for, and indeed the enthusiasm for, not just the defence of Donald Trump, that runs from the very top of the Conservative Party and right through the British media. One member of whom today is trying to compare events in Washington on Wednesday to Gordon Brown's attempts to cobble together a coalition after losing an overall majority in 2010. And that's what I mean by just how mad the contortions become that you would undertake in order to avoid looking in the mirror, to avoid admitting reality, and say, oh, crikey, I probably shouldn't have done that. Peter's in Camden. Peter, what do you think?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I think that Gove and Johnson fit firmly into category 2. If I've got your categories right.
Well, that's the one where they saw Trump, they loved it, and they cheered him on. Maybe they perhaps talked of his many, many good qualities or described him as a phenomenon.
Yeah, for reasons of pragmatism, because it suits their ultra-right-wing, neoliberal, disaster capitalist agenda.
It sounded a bit too rehearsed, that line. I don't know that...
Sorry.
That's okay.
Well, no, that's how I speak.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Right, I mean, in terms of Trump, as soon as I saw the man, I saw him a crypto-fascist waiting in the wings, and after Charlottesville, I realised, no, he's not a crypto-fascist, he's a fascist.
He's the real deal. I mean, he saw the people in the Capitol on Wednesday and said, we love them, we love you. And of course, he saw the people at Charlottesville. People were wearing Auschwitz T-shirts on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, you said earlier that he wasn't a fascist because he didn't have an ideology. Well, I would argue that he did have an ideology by proxy, by supporting the people that were marching up and down the streets in townships.
But he would have supported hippies if he thought there was something in it for him. That's all I mean by him not having an ideology.
Yeah.
The racism is baked into him. That much is clear. Which would but I think he could have ignored his racism if he thought it was going to make him money or power. That's often the way with these so-called strong men. They could have risen to power on a completely different wave of left-wing populism if the planets had been aligned differently. That's what I mean by him not really having an ideology. But the racism is non-negotiable, whatever Nigel Evans might have argued.
It fits in with Nazism, doesn't it? Racism and Nazism go together hand in glove.
There were people displaying Nazi insignia on Wednesday, and they see themselves as supporters of Donald Trump. You could make a case for saying that's not his fault, but there'd be a lot of heavy lifting involved, I suspect.
But also, James, if you think about it, the socio-economic conditions that give rise to fascism have existed in America for quite some time, and I would argue even in a lot of the West, whereby when the system, the prevailing economic system, lets down lots and lots and lots of the overwhelming majority of in inverted commas, ordinary working people.
Yes, well, I will look after you, and those people over there are your enemy. It's a heady brew. It's an almost irresistible invitation.
So, that's basically what happened. I mean, he's opened the door to people like Trump. And I honestly do believe that if Trump had won this election, it wouldn't have been long before you saw him wearing some kind of militarised uniform and all the people in, just in the same way. I mean, the comparison with Hitler, with the Wall Street crash in ¡29, where you could say, well, we had an economic crash in 2008.
Yes.
I mean, the comparison is just just too close for comfort.
I see why you say that, and of course, we forget that there was a failed coup in Germany, wasn't there, in 1923, that began in circumstances, the beer hall putsch, not entirely dissimilar from what we saw on Wednesday, and everyone then relaxed a bit, and look where that led. But even I still balk slightly, and I'm sure I've done it myself. But actually, no, you've just reminded me of something, and I can plug my first book here, Peter. So I owe you a solid. Godwin's Law. Have you heard of Godwin's Law?
I've heard of it, but I can't.
Godwin's Law is the idea that any argument on the internet will eventually end up with one person accusing the other person of being like Hitler or of being a Nazi. That is Godwin's Law.
Okay.
And when I was researching my first book, How to Be Right in a World Gone Wrong, I looked up what had happened to Godwin, and it turned out that as Trump was either in the process of trying to get elected or shortly after being elected, Godwin himself said, no, this time it's true. this time you can make these comparisons. So, we shall wait and see.
Good job that he's out. Good job that he's out.
It is a good job that... Go on, sorry.
I still don't think the danger's over though, James. It's not over at all, because you've got a divided America. And those conditions exist in Britain.
Yes.
You've got the Tommy Robinson, you've got the football lad. They're constantly talking about racism at football. Well, that's being organised, James. It's being organised by the Football Lads Alliance.
Well, hang on a minute. You have to. They're not here to defend themselves, and I don't know that that's true. So you've said it now, but I would qualify it with the comments that I just made. Thank you for the call, though, Peter. It's good to talk to you. The time is 10 minutes after 12. It's funny, I mentioned that 1923 beer hall putsch. 10 years later, Hitler was essentially a dictator in Germany. And it is, I think, fair to point out that Trump told his supporters, even while condemning them, that this was only the beginning of their beautiful journey. What do you think he means? Seems a valid question to ask. Gordon's in Clydebank. Gordon, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I was just pointing out as well that no one can deny what Trump was. Like he stated.
Nigel Evans just did. Nigel Evans just said there's no evidence of his racism, and he's Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons.
Well, if you go straight back to when he was a landlord in New York, he took a program. He would systematically evict people of colour or deny them leases in his buildings. He got sued numerous times for it and walked away scot-free from them, but he was proven to be a slum landlord, and he would refuse to give leases to people of colour in New York.
And now I knew that, and many people listening will have known that. Many people won't have known that, and if we were to transfer this conversation to America, those numbers would increase. The number of people who were aware of it would increase, and that's just looking the other way, isn't it? That's saying, yeah, I know what he is, obviously what he is, the Central Park 5 being another example, but I don't mind because of the benefits and the bonuses. I don't mind that, and that I think you, like me, find that the hardest point of view to understand, perhaps.
One of the things I find the hardest is I've got a friend who I grew up with. They were in school together. He moved out to Atlanta about 11 years ago, and since he's moved there, he has become one of the biggest Trump supporters I've ever known. And I find it astonishing that for all the years, he was early 30s when he moved out there. No, the late 20s, early 30s. For all the time between he left school and went to America, he never worked, lived off the state, moved to America,
yes,
and then become a Trump supporter.
How bizarre.
Well,
is that because his whole life is somebody else's fault, or am I oversimplifying things?
Well, probably, yeah. But one of the things, when he moved there as an immigrant into America, not having a job, he was lucky his wife was working in that. He was potentially one of the people Trump wanted to throw out of America.
Yes, of course. Well, it's logic.
He was an immigrant into the country.
Logic left the country a long time ago. What did he get out of that support, do you think? What was it?
I have no idea. I think it just helps him with what he had previously been hiding around racial and sexist views.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, we just had Farage defending the